Welcome to TABE 11 and 12 Trials and Triumphs, a presentation for adult educators looking for best practices and practical suggestions to help smooth their transition to and implementation of the TABE 11-12 test. As ABE-ASE programs across the state have transitioned to TABE 11 and 12, programs have experienced both trials and triumphs. In this brief presentation, we will learn about creative solutions programs have developed to address these trials and some of the victories programs have experienced with the new test. Several programs kindly agreed to share their best practices with us in a recorded interview, so you'll be hearing from them together with Central Service Center staff throughout this presentation. In this video, we will focus on topics such as scoring, testing time, orientation of students, placement of students, TABE online, test fatigue, and staff and student motivation. Before we get started, a quick note of encouragement. It is likely that nothing in this presentation will be a perfect fit for every program. Please take the ideas you hear from other programs and adapt them to fit your program. This is not a one-size-fits-all situation, and we recognize that. So be creative. Do what works for you and your students. The first issue we'll discuss today is scoring the TABE 11 and 12. We have heard that some programs have chosen to hand score the TABE test. Hand scoring is time-consuming, laborious, and leaves programs open to error, particularly because of two-part questions and field test questions. To score by hand, you have to use the TABE test answer keys to see the correct answers for each question and to see which are field test questions that should not be counted in the total possible points. You will also need the scoring guide booklet to record raw scores and scale scores, and you must teach your staff to use these documents appropriately. The relatively high cost of the score ease sheets, which you see on the left, has discouraged some programs from using them, but they do increase scoring accuracy, and they simplify the scoring process by removing the need for multiple documents and multiple steps during scoring. This may help reduce time and staff costs in the long run. Even more than scorees, we recommend programs use the TABE 11-12 and score with the scanning option, which uses a Scantron type sheet like you see on the right. Some programs may be getting ready to use the scanning feature for grading the TABE for the first time. Programs are encouraged to consider moving to the scanning option because of its ease of use and its increased reliability. Let's hear one administrator's perspective on the scanning option now.
I was sure of my choice even before we started the process because I am going under 100% accuracy. And when you have a test of this kind with so many questions and multiple answers and part A, part B questions, I just did not want to rely on a human grading it and scoring it. This is quick and it's 100% reliable. The best user guide that we found most helpful was the small 16-page step-by-step guide that is called DRC Insight Portal User Guide. It's very short, but it literally takes you step by step through the whole process.
As Rennie pointed out, programs need to know how to set up the scanner and know how to use it. She recommends programs reference the local scanning guide, a 16-page document available in the Insight portal. This is a useful reference. It is also strongly recommended that programs involve their IT department at the outset of the scanning experience. Rennie mentioned there were updates to run and plugins to upload that at her institution only IT staff have permission to do. So without working through them first, they had to wait a bit to get their scanners set up. Also, there are small issues you might run into that the scanning guide and/or your tech department can help with. For instance, it might seem obvious to use the controls on the scanner, but you actually have to click the scan button on your computer to initiate the scanning process. Also, consider creating a sample scannable answer sheet that is already filled in so students can see what it should look like. This will hopefully minimize errors when scanning. These are some practical suggestions that will hopefully make a transition from paper scoring to scanning much easier. A couple of last scanning reminders. When students are filling out the informational biographical section of the scannable answer sheet, there are 3 items that must be filled in order for the test to scan correctly. First and last name, date of birth, and gender. Also, remind students to fill in the bubbles completely with pencil, staying inside the circle, and make their marks nice and dark. This will also help avoid errors when scanning tests. The next issue we want to discuss is the allowable time of the TABE 11 and 12. The allowable times can be found on the ICCB website at the bottom of the list of TABE resources, and they can also be found at tabetest.com under the TABE 11 and 12 Resources tab. If you have a test directions booklet that was ordered in summer 2018 or earlier, those booklets may have the original longer allowable times. Make sure you check these booklets and update them if necessary so your testing staff has the correct information. Programs have been reporting a variety of average times for student testing. Some finish in about half the time, a few take the full time. Several programs have reported that students testing at the highest test levels, A and D, tend to spend the longest time on their tests. This makes sense, as those higher level tests are very rigorous and there are multiple reading passages they have to work through. Therefore, several programs recommend that you make your A and D level testers take a break between reading part 1 and reading part 2. This will give their brains a needed break and hopefully alleviate some test fatigue. The issue of allowable time on the TABE leads us to talk about how your orientation and registration practices may have changed or need to change. Many programs have indicated they shifted to a 2-day orientation model to accommodate for the longer testing time, among other reasons. We understand that making big changes like this to your orientation registration practices can be difficult. There are a lot of moving parts to consider, including staffing, scheduling, and student placement. You may be thinking, but aren't there a lot of potential problems with a 2-day orientation model? Some of the concerns on the screen might be your concerns too. Decisions about how to staff orientations are up to each program, obviously, and figuring out how to motivate students can be challenging in any circumstance. After talking with several programs, we have learned that many have simply decided there is too much to cover in one session. Between TABE testing, paperwork, career pathway descriptions, goal setting, it's tough to fit it all in. When you move to a 2-day model, you can split the testing in whatever way makes the most sense. Doing the locator on day 1, for instance, and then the reading TABE on day 2. But is it true that some students might not return for the second day of orientation? Yes, that can happen. Elgin Community College has seen this happen with some registrants, and they choose to look at it this way. If students are not motivated enough to complete the registration and testing process, how motivated were they really to enroll and persist in an adult ed program? The 2-day orientation becomes in essence a screener that filters out those students who are not motivated enough or who haven't made the necessary plans to commit to a class. If they could not attend a 2-day orientation, will they really be able to commit to a 3-day-a-week class for 12 weeks, for instance? ECC chooses to look at these students as people who aren't yet ready to commit. So they wait and reach out to them for future class opportunities. So, keeping in mind that there are legitimate concerns about changing your orientation model, here are a couple of useful suggestions you can consider. Offering staggered orientations where some students do everything in one day and other students return for a second day might be a partial solution to the concern about moving to a 2-day orientation. Since the higher level TABE testers tend to take the longest, perhaps only they need the 2-day orientation, and the lower level TABE testers could fit it into one session. Remember, try to be flexible about these ideas. If you are initially thinking, there's no way that would work for us, try to be creative and think how that idea could be adapted to improve what's happening at your program. For instance, you may initially think Saturday orientations would never work for us. But let's hear from Libby at Joliet Junior College about how Saturday orientations work for them.
All of our orientations are staffed by our teachers. Our teachers have to go through a proctor training session with us. That's over and above everything else the ICCB requires. We take them through our own training session and make sure they're ready to go. And then they are allowed to choose what sessions they want to work. A lot of our teachers like to work because they do get paid a stipend to do an orientation. So we do have Saturday sessions. Saturday sessions are extremely popular with the students, and honestly, they're very popular with our teachers too, because many of our teachers might teach high school during the day, and then on the Saturdays they would like to come in and do an orientation. It kind of, you have a pulse of what's going on with the students and kind of get an idea of how things are moving with the program itself. So that's how we staff our orientations.
A final thought about registering new students. Several programs who have used TABE 1112 for an entire semester have reported a significant shift in their enrollment data. The number of students testing in at the ASE level is declining, while the number of students testing in at the ABE level is increasing. One program reported that from fall 2017 to fall 2018, the number of enrolled ABE students nearly doubled, while the number of ASE students dropped by more than 75%. This is not a surprise, considering the increased rigor of the test and its alignment to the college and career readiness standards. We might expect students to score lower overall on such a test, but though this shift is understandable, it does have a practical impact on programs. If your program has leveled classes and you see an increase in your ABE enrollment and a decrease in ASE, this could impact how many classes at which level need to be scheduled each term. This in turn could affect staffing needs, room assignments, the number of volunteer tutors needed, among other issues. Be thinking about how such a shift in enrollment might impact your program. However, we have also learned of a clear benefit from having a more rigorous placement test. Because the test is aligned to the CCR standards, if a program is integrating the standards into its instruction, then what is being taught in class will align strongly with what is being assessed on the TABE. So classrooms using a standards-aligned curriculum will be teaching students the level-appropriate skills they need to demonstrate in order to make level gains on the TABE. This is just one more encouragement to us to make sure our instructors are following the approved curriculum and incorporating the standards into their instruction. Our next topic of discussion is TABE Online. If programs are not using TABE Online yet, we encourage you to consider this delivery method as an option in the future. There are significant benefits to using TABE Online, including reduction in testing staff time and effort, increase in scoring accuracy, availability of student diagnostic reports, and decrease in overall cost. Does TABE Online have any drawbacks? Well, yes, as with any assessment, there are issues to work through. Testing staff at Triton College reported that some students unintentionally skip a section of the test, for instance, part 2 of the reading test, and then they exit the testing platform. TABE 910 Online did not allow students to skip a section. They had to complete sections in the exact order presented. If this accidental skipping happens now, students are able to log back in with their assigned username and password and resume the missed sections. But it's best to avoid this if possible. Extra guidance or explicit test directions to students could alleviate the problem. Consider changing your verbal directions or putting an instruction sheet near the screen that says, Raise your hand when you see this screen so administrators can ensure students are completing all needed sections of the test. Another suggestion is to have all TABE online testing staff walk through the online tools training available at tabetest.com. This is like a playground for the TABE online platform, so testing staff and students can familiarize themselves with the way the test works, as well as with all the tools available in the platform. The more familiar your staff is with the online system, the more qualified they are to answer and even anticipate student questions. TABE online programs and some scanning programs have also reported that they have to wait a bit of time for the score report to appear. During student downtime, when waiting for test score results, give students something useful to do, like a writing sample, a goal-setting activity, perhaps a video to watch about career pathways. Give your staff the time they need to complete necessary administrative work without having bored students staring at them and making them feel rushed. This will also allow you to maximize your orientation time by having two things happening at once. Even though we've discussed a few issues that have to be worked out with TABE Online, it is still the highly recommended method for delivery of TABE 1112. Aside from the benefits we've already mentioned, we're happy to share an update from Joliet Junior College that provides even more reason to move to online delivery.
Over the course of the last few months, something interesting evolved. We noticed that when students took the TABE Score Ease, they took more time. They would take the whole time. There were some that would finish a little bit early, but as a group, they have to take the whole time. And the majority of them were taking the time. When we moved over to the online version, all of a sudden, they were finishing so much more quickly. It would just seem to be user-friendly, and they were able, I don't know if it was being able to read on the computer screen. I have no idea what moved them along, but the online version, we used much less time.
The next issue we want to discuss is test fatigue, which is a legitimate concern considering the longer allowable times on the TABE 1112. This is an issue where we don't have a lot of control. The times are established and we have to cope with them. Remember, on the TABE Test Administrator webinar, we talked about part of the reason these allowable times are so much longer. Because the TABE is now fully aligned to the college and career readiness standards, the only way to accurately assess student proficiency with these more rigorous standards is to ask students to perform more rigorous tasks with more rigorous text. This makes sense to us, but perhaps we need to explain this to our teachers and to our students so they understand the why behind the longer times. We have discussed several options for extending your orientations so students are not as overwhelmed by the pre-testing, but we also want to address test fatigue as it relates to post-testing. When it comes to post-testing, programs find that some students struggle with completing both parts in one sitting, especially students in a night class who are then post-testing as late as 8 or 9 p.m. Some students have no problem working on Part A and B in one sitting, even without a break, but often students seem to benefit from splitting the test over 2 sessions. This, of course, leaves programs vulnerable to the same issue as 2-day orientations. What if students take Part 1 of the post-test but disappear before they can take Part 2? Then the post-test cannot be counted. This is a serious consideration. Programs will have to weigh the competing risks of 1, splitting post-tests into 2 sessions and risking the loss of some post-tests if students don't return to finish, versus 2, making students post-test in one sitting and perhaps perform poorly and not earn that level gain. This may not be something you can know without trying it. If you want to experiment with these options, you might try one strategy over a period of time, then analyze your data and make a decision about how to move forward. Remember, any change in testing process or strategy needs to be communicated clearly to your staff so everyone understands what is expected of them and why. This leads us to our final topic, which is motivation. What are the best ways to motivate both our students and our staff members in the wake of TABE 11 and 12? One benefit of TABE 1112 is the available reporting on student proficiency. You will remember from the TABE 1112 Test Administrator webinar, we learned about the Individual Diagnostic Profile Report, which shows the different domains covered on each subject test at each level. The report shows whether students are proficient, partially proficient, or not proficient in each domain. These reports are readily available and free if using the TABE online or scanning option. If hand scoring, the report can be produced, but the report form must be purchased and it will require staff time to analyze each test. Programs are finding these reports to be excellent tools that provide valuable information. The reports are being used by classroom teachers to better align their instruction to the standards and to each student's needs. Also, programs are using these reports when conferencing with students, often after a post-test, to discuss areas that need additional study before the next testing session. This kind of information can be a valuable motivation tool to use with our students. The more information teachers and students have about performance, the more directly they can address gaps and weaknesses, as well as celebrate gains and successes. Aside from using diagnostic reports from the test, there are other ways we can try to motivate students. Elgin Community College chooses to celebrate students who earn an NRS level gain on their post-test by posting their name on the wall of stars in the main hallway of their adult education building. Hopefully, you will brainstorm about other ways your program could motivate and reward students for giving a great effort on a pre or post test. Here are a few other ideas to consider. No one incentive will motivate every single student, so you might try a combination of things. A written note of encouragement might be effective for one student, whereas a pen or a notebook from your institution might spark someone else's interest. If purchasing swag is cost prohibitive, try to get creative. Some items showing your school or institution's logo might be available for free. You can approach your institution's foundation or other community agency for possible funding or grants. Or you can explore very low-cost sources for swag items, such as Oriental Trading Company. One thing we want to acknowledge is the importance of changing our mindset as staff members, not just trying to change our students' mindsets. Staff might inadvertently discourage students by commenting negatively on the length of the test or how hard it is. This is counterproductive for students. If we want students to tackle the TABE test with positivity, giving their best effort, the positivity must start with the testing staff and with instructors. Students will take their lead from us, so we should be setting a positive tone. Remember, most students do not know that the TABE test has changed. The new test is full of differences for us, yes, but not for them. They don't know any differently. It's best for all staff, instructors, administrators, and support staff to encourage students to not only give their best effort, but to help them understand how having a positive mindset will benefit them on the TABE test and in their future endeavors. Let's hear from Rennie how one of her teachers serves as the greatest motivator for students because of a positive attitude and mindset regarding the TABE test.
What I have found out is that when the teacher is really encouraging and has demonstrated to the class the importance of the test, have run practice testing sessions, have discussed testing skills with them, ran practices with them. I see that we have one class that the teacher is extremely organized and have made it a conscious choice to talk about testing a little bit every class, and they do practice items. And it seems that in that particular class, the scores that we have, because the most of those students are at this point post-tested, exceptional results. So to me, the role of the teacher is extremely important.
A great idea for helping encourage staff and instructors in their attitude and approach to the TABE was shared by Elgin Community College. The goal is to make instructors and staff more aware of TABE test performance through these occasional benchmark meetings. An ECC supervisor conducts the benchmark meetings with individual staff members to review their students' performance on the TABE and to discuss how their classroom data impacts the program's overall measurable skill gains at each level. Also, each time the level gain percentage is calculated, that data is put out to the staff through email, so each person is made aware of overall program data for the year to date. This is an important activity at ECC in keeping staff and instructors on board with the broader goals of the program, and it encourages instructors to seek strategies for continuous improvement when it comes to assessment. This is motivation that we all need. Mary from ECC also left a few words of encouragement for all administrators as they ride this roller coaster called TABE 11 and 12.
I've been in adult ed for 35 years, so I've been around with the TABE 7-8. I've been around with the TABE 9-10, and now I'm around for TABE 11-12. And I don't know that I'll be around for TABE 13-14, but for each one of those transitions from the previous TABE series to the next, there's always been the angst that goes with change. And then once you get into it, it just becomes the routine. So I think just being patient to get through the initial, oh, this is terrible, and then get to, okay, it's just a test that we have to do to measure the students, and this is where we're going with it.
Thank you so much for your time and attention, and we hope you have learned some best practices that will help your program adapt and ultimately thrive with TABE 11 and 12.